Hey there, STEM enthusiasts! Welcome back to Cameron's Lab, Dive In, the go-to podcast for STEM students, crafted with passion by one of your own. I'm Cameron, your enthusiastic and ever-curious host. Buckle up for today's insightful episode. Ready to dive in? Hi everyone, welcome back to Cameron's Lab. Today I am here with Jeevana. I am super excited to have her today because I don't know if you saw before, but we had another collaboration over on her page where I helped to write an article about women in biomedical engineering and then also just a little bit about myself. So if you haven't looked at that already, please be sure to do so. And then I'm just going to give you a quick introduction to her because I feel like she is one of the most amazing people, absolutely supportive and just really cool. So she is currently a master's student at King's College studying stem cells and regenerative therapies. She actually graduated from Queen Mary University, which is where I'm studying at the moment, and she did that for biology. She is the founder for Scientia News, which is just amazing community of different volunteers and all working together to create this large news platform where it's basically just breaking down research articles that make it easier for us to understand. Super excited to have you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so can we talk about your journey into this study for your master's of regenerative therapies and then stem cells? So how did you get into it and what really inspired you?
So when I was in school, during GCSE and my IB, when I was studying IB as well, our teachers mentioned about stem cells, but they never went into much detail about how the applications of stem cells. We knew what it was about. And I sort of had a little light bulb moment when they were like, you can change it into a different type of cell, but that means you can, try and cure diseases or repair tissues. And then when when I'd started IB, I went to a couple of talks and I met Dr. Grossman, who's a science communicator, and she talked about regenerative therapies. And there was a famous topic that went around in 1997 called the vacancy mouse. I don't know if you heard of it, or the ear mouse, where I think researchers in America, they put cartilage cells in the mouse and an ear shape came out of the back of the mouth.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that was a whole controversial topic about it. But I think that was sort of the start of regenerative medicine. And I also got to meet Dr. Winston, who did research in IVF studies, and he also wants to try and use embryonic stem cells in reproductive diseases. So those small things was something I was very interested in. And so when I came into Queen Mary, again, they mentioned it very briefly about stem cells. And also I was very interested in medicine as well, so it was quite interesting to put those two together. So doing this master's has been very interesting, and I'm glad I'm doing that topic.
It's fascinating. I think it's really interesting how just listening to little things in class can really spark your interest.
Exactly.
Especially if they don't go farther into it and you're just there hello.
Yeah, exactly.
What about the rest?
What about the rest of it? I want to know more.
So just based on that, so now you're doing just continuing your studies and also you're graduating soon, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
So now that you're graduating, what are some insights that you might be able to provide just into the master's program at King's?
So my master's program is called Stem Cells and Regenerative Therapies from Bench to Market. So we're not just learning the science side of it, in the lab, but we're also learning about the commercialization and how investors will buy into the technology. So learning all those different aspects, not just science, but the business aspect is very eye-opening because we don't always just have to learn about being in the lab all the time. There's other opportunities consultancy, analysts. So I feel that course is a massive all-rounder. So yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's cool as well that you get to do the business side of that because most of the time they're just oh yeah, you could sell that when you guys graduate, but they never tell us how.
Exactly.
So it's nice that you get that double side.
Yeah, we even had a module where we had to do presentations on different topics. So we had to talk about products that weren't able to be commercialized, if there were controversies, and understanding profit, how much did the company make from that. And we met someone from AstraZeneca who came and talked about the commercialization of cellular therapies.
So cool.
So it's quite cool. Yeah.
So I just wanted to go back to what you mentioned before. So with the tissue engineering and stem cells, what you mentioned, it was a high level of what your teachers give, and that was the same for myself.
Yeah.
But nobody really goes deep into it, so they don't give you that really substantial information to keep you interested.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why does nobody really dive deep into it?
I don't know. I think for me, for example, I think especially at the time, so when I started my master's, my professor actually told me back then, and he was early 2000s or 1990s, he said that when he had done his course and PhD and he was trying to find jobs in stem cells, not many people were talking about it then still. And so even he said like he was working in companies for stem cells, but then they got bankrupt because at that time it just wasn't popular. And because there's a lot of controversies around stem cells, I feel like people are scared to like bring it up more. But I feel like now in future, I think regenerative medicine is going to actually be very, very important.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is why I think that, I mean, I hope now that people in school are actually learning about tissue engineering and stem cells, because I feel like that is a very important topic.
100%.
Yeah.
From my like basic knowledge of tissue engineering, so we did a course on it just last semester actually.
Yeah.
So that was one of my first, I guess, like deep dives, like I said, into tissue engineering and then regenerative medicine, and it was really cool.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So I think like students would really be interested in learning a bit more about that early on. So despite like the controversies and all of the things, I feel like the earlier you introduce people to it, the much better it is.
And I feel like with especially stem cells and regenerative therapies, you're actually combining science and engineering as well. So it can open up, you know, more paths for students as well. So I feel like that should be like talked about much more.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And then were there any, I guess, like other, I know you mentioned like the business side, but back to the science side of your degree, were there any like key topics or key skills that you've found that you've learned?
In terms of my course itself, most of it's more like doing journal clubs and, you know, talking as well, because I think our main like project in terms of this course is, you know, getting investors to buy the product. So I feel like in terms of the master's course, I've done more about like talking in front of people, presenting work, rather than just doing like the actual science, like research side of it. But it's also very interesting to learn new diseases, like rare diseases, because our professors say like a lot of doctors, they don't know much about the rare diseases because there's not a cure for it. Whilst for us, like we'd know the cure for like those rare diseases, like Crohn's disease, for example, and like rare blood cancers. A lot of stem cells are being used to try and find a cure for it.
So following up on that, do you get to work with doctors in terms of your research? Because like you mentioned, there might be things that you know that maybe they're not quite working on, or do you get to know like maybe how to work with them in the future?
So in my course itself, I didn't get that much of an opportunity to do that, but we did have like a module where we had stem cells and regenerative therapies, where we actually had medical students with us, like studying about it. But outside of it, I actually went to King's College Hospital, and I volunteered there like when I was in secondary school, but I went there again. And when I was working there, I used to volunteer in the hematology department. So I asked one of the managers I work with that I'm still in contact with, she said like to come and she will try and find someone like to talk to me. And so we went to the department, and there was like a stem cell department for blood cancer. So I got to meet the doctors there and was just doing like a sort of shadowing experience, and them using stem cells to see if it's made a difference on blood cancer patients. So it's quite amazing to see like how now stem cells is becoming more popular, because I feel like back then it just wasn't, you know, talked about, and especially with cancer itself, people go through chemotherapy and it doesn't, you know, work out. And I feel like the stem cells will be like the next big thing in cancer. Yeah.
I think it's really cool, like even like what you mentioned with like how it's becoming more popular now, but also just like seeing that you yourself are taking the initiative to really put yourself out there and learn a little bit more. So highly recommend, guys, to all the other women, put yourself out there, take the initiative. You heard it here first. Can I ask, what was your research thesis focused on for your master's?
So right now it's very early stages, so I'm still researching into it, but we need to make a novel stem cell technology for a rare disease. So we basically need to pitch it to our professors, who will be like our investors, and just like, you know, sell it to them. So it's just based off that. So it's very early stages right now, because we're still like choosing which disease that we want to do and the type of stem cell that we want to focus on. But it's quite hard, because we now have to think in a more business mindset rather than a science mindset. So we need to make sure like licensing, making sure like who we can collaborate with that could, you know, give us some money to, you know, launch the product, for example, like the whole manufacturing costs. So there's like a lot more that we need to think about. So the aim of it is just for us to, you know, sort of think as if we're like a businessman or a businesswoman.
Wow. So I think earlier we mentioned that stem cells and like the fact like tissue engineering isn't delved deep enough into during like high school biology. So I guess what would be your opinion in terms of how to get students more involved, and like how can we start bringing it up more in those classes?
Yeah, I think there should be more like hands-on experience as well. I think that's the main thing, especially with sciences. I think lab experience is very much needed. And especially at my time, it was very difficult to get lab experience. And obviously during COVID as well, everything was locked down. And even like in uni, like I didn't actually do anything specifically to do with like stem cell research. And I feel like they should have that in biology as well, because I feel like they put that more for biomedical students or cancer students. But for biology itself, I feel like it should be like included. But yeah, I think for high schools, they should also have like in the curriculum some sort of like lab experience or bringing someone in and talking about it. Because, you know, maybe teachers don't have as much knowledge. So if they bring like someone who's, you know, got expertise in it, then it would be good to, you know, share that to the students. But, yeah.
I think that really worked well for me in high school as well, when they brought in somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
I could listen to them and, you know.
Yeah, because I remember when I mentioned about Dr. Emily Grossman when I went to see her, like that was actually an extra thing. Like the teachers just told us, oh, there's a talk going if you guys want to go. And I remember it was just me and I think another person from school in my whole school.
Wow.
And I saw other students as well, but from different, but it wasn't like a big group. It was just like maybe like a good 10, 20.
Sad.
Yeah, a good 10, 20. And I was just there like listening to this, like this is like the future. And I feel like more people should, you know, hear about it. So yeah, it should be incorporated.
Taking the initiative. That's what we've learned so far, which is amazing. So I guess speaking of taking the initiative, can we talk a little bit about Scientia News?
Yeah.
So would you mind just explaining what it is? I did try in the beginning.
You said it perfectly.
It would be better if you explain what is Scientia News and then what really motivated you to start it.
Yeah, so Scientia News is a website where we have free articles and resources. And it's basically for the whole STEM community, like anyone can just read it. And we just cut down like complicated topics into a much, you know, understanding manner. But anyone outside of STEM can just read it for fun, you know. And we also have like free resources to help students for A-levels and IB and GCSE as well. And the main like spark for that was during final year, we had a module called Project Skills. And we had some tasks where we had to do a lay summary, which is try to break down complicated topics into an understanding manner. So they gave like a whole list of like topics and research papers, and we had to like choose a research paper and article and then write it into a summary.
Oh, wow.
And so when I was just like looking at all the topics, like the topic seemed so interesting, you know, and like trying to like put that in a way that everyone could understand. I was like, that's like a good, I think that's a good like technique as well for people for like to revise. So that was sort of an idea that came to me. I was just thinking like there should be a site where we should have articles like that, because when we were in school, GCSE and A-level IB, we'd have, I don't know if you've used BBC Bite Size or
that came in clutch every time.
that BBC Bite Size or textbooks, they all like cut down right to information that we understand like when we come home. But I feel like when you come into university, all we have to do is read like so many papers, especially sciences, like 20, 30 pages. Even for me, like I can't. I'd be just highlighting everything. I'm not even taking all the important information. I'm just highlighting everything. And it's so hard for me, especially like note taking. Like I don't know which information I need to take out that's important, right? So that was another thing that sort of sparked it, because I was like, for university, I feel like there should be some sort of website as well for university students to try and get information quickly. So all of that together made me think, you know, we should have a website. So, and to be honest, I had no sort of like background or knowledge, like how do I start a website? Who do I like, you know? So then I spoke to one of my friends that I knew back in primary school and sort of just gave her the idea. And I just spoke to a couple of friends like, oh, I just have this idea, but I don't know if I'm actually going to do it. And then my friend said like, you know, I think you should do it. So then from there, me and her, we sort of worked together and sort of designed the website. It was terrible. Looking at it at the beginning, it was just brown.
It was the first one.
It was the first one, it was just brown. I literally like whipped up a random logo within like 30, 40 minutes. So the logo is completely different to what it is now. I don't know what I was doing. I just wanted something on there. But yeah, and it's like grown into something massive, which I did not expect. So,
It's really, really cool. So speaking of just like it growing into something massive, so you also now have volunteers that are able to work with you. They're really building like this community around it, which is so cool. Can you talk about that as well? Yeah,
so obviously like when I started, I just mentioned it to a couple of friends about my website, and if you're interested in writing, you can. But I mainly like started posting it on LinkedIn. And obviously now you can like do job posts. So I was thinking, you know, let's just try it on there. And I think at the beginning it was very hard to like find people, because obviously it's like a completely new project. So people are just going to be looking at it like, do I trust this? Like, is it a good opportunity? So at the beginning, it was quite hard. I think we only had maybe 5 or 6 volunteers, so like 5 writers, and then just me and my friend doing the website. And now it's turned into like 65, 66 of us.
So many people.
Yeah, I'm just like completely shocked. And some of them were from Queen Mary's. So I think like probably, you know, people talking about it. So I even had like a person message me being like, oh, I heard it from like someone from Queen Mary about your website. Like, can I volunteer? So it's quite crazy, like people like hearing it from people and just talking about it. And then, you know, reaching out to me being like, oh, do you have this opportunity? And stuff like that. And so now like the project's so big and we have so many people. Some of the volunteers that I have, I've given them role as like a subject manager. So like biology content manager, chemistry content manager. So that is sort of, you know, building up to big things and letting them also, you know, take the opportunity to lead a group of people. And it's good to add to your, you know, CV, like personal skills, like everything. So yeah.
Wow, that is so cool. That's so cool. So what has it been like, I guess, for you building that community and like really, I guess, linking all of us little STEM people together?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
How has that been like?
Yeah, generally, like, I still process, like, I'm talking to, like, connecting this many students together. And like, for example, the International Women's Project that we did, I think that was quite an emotional moment for me doing that because, you know, I was trying to get some girls in my website, the volunteers, you know, to write about themselves. And a lot of them are from underrepresented backgrounds. And so them talking about their passion, like, for STEM and, like, them being, like, a woman in STEM, which is a big thing. And, like, you know, with you talking about, you know, biomedical engineering, women in biomedical engineering, that sort of thing, and connecting everyone into, like, a big community and inspiring others. I think that's, like, my main thing, like, inspiring other people, and especially from ethnic, like, backgrounds as well in STEM. So yeah, like just having that many people like under me, like is such like a big thing, and yeah, I just enjoy it.
You're basically like a role model. Well, not basically. You are. You are a role model now for other young women in STEM, especially that are coming up, like you said, from ethnic backgrounds. It's so lovely to see.
And like, especially with the actual topics and stuff, like writing it. Especially when they're writing about something that they're very, very passionate about, and they reach out to me being like, you know, thank you for letting me, you know, because I feel like a lot of, especially in journalism and scientific communications, I think they're very like specific. Like companies are quite specific. Like they want you to write it in a specific way. Whilst for me, I want them to write it in their way, like how they write it, but also like for everyone to understand. And so, for example, I had a volunteer who wrote about a type of cancer, and she even reached out to me saying like, you know, thank you for letting me write about it because one of her family members had that, you know, type of cancer. And she said like she felt like it was nice to write a topic about that so more people know about it. So it's all these small things, you know, other people can like connect to it. I think there was another one where I did it on prostate cancer. And there was another type of cancer that I'd done. And I even had people messaging on LinkedIn being like, oh, I had a family member who had this, you know, thank you for like talking about it. And also, we also have maths and economics, which is another section we have. And even that, like, people wouldn't expect you to write articles on it, but we've had, like, people write, you know, articles on it, and it's done very well. So it's quite nice that it's, you know, growing. Yeah.
It's nice because you're giving people an outlet as well. Bringing in, like, the different volunteers that you have, you mentioned that it's not only, like, for example, when you did the International Women's Month, it's not just breaking down scientific articles, but you're also giving them an outlet to be, I guess, vulnerable, really, like kind of show what they're passionate about, and maybe family members as well. Have there been any challenges, maybe not around that topic, but just like with bringing in Scientia news? Have you mentioned any challenges that you've maybe overcome?
I think obviously at the beginning, actually, you know, launching that project was obviously a big thing, like what website, you know, designer I should use and things like that, especially with no sort of knowledge behind it. And that time, like, I didn't have, like, obviously I had my friend there, but, like, I didn't have much support around that. So me doing it on my own, like, working day and night to think about, like, how am I going to launch the project? And then, obviously, in terms of actually getting volunteers, like, where am I going to find them? So, obviously, opening on social pages was, like, a big thing as well. And I think, obviously, at the beginning, like, the difficulty we had was obviously having, like, volunteers who were actually interested in, you know, doing it. Because they would, like, apply and be like, yes. And then, like, we email back, be like, okay, you ready? And they're like, no. Or, like, oh, they found another opportunity. Or they would say, oh, we thought this was, like, a paid job. And so, and, like, to me, that's not... obviously, like, we put this as a volunteer opportunity.
You say, like, volunteer,
but
paid.
It's sad to see, like, for some people, like, they just want it because they want to add it on their CV or, you know... And it's not just that. The reason I also launched this is because I want to give opportunities for people. Because, for example, like in general, applying for jobs has been like such a draining process, and it's hard. Like some people are like amazing and they get rejected and things like that. And it's obviously hard to see that. And even for us, obviously, we work into like choosing who's actually really, really good for it. But at the same time, we don't want to be too strict on that. And we want to let people like, sort of flourish and give the opportunity, which is my, main thing. So yeah, I think that was the struggle, just finding the right people. I think that was the main thing. But right now, like the managers that I have, they're genuinely amazing. And my friend Manisha, who's the managing director, she's also amazing behind the scenes. But I think the main thing you need is people who support your project and your values, like in general. And then they'll just be there for you, like no matter what. I think like that's like the main important thing. But yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
The right people really make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. It's the right people, because if it's people that are, not going to be supportive about it, it's just going to drain you, and you're just going to give up on it. So you just need the right people behind you.
So, Scientia News, with obviously one of like your wonderful achievements so far, but it's also made you into a role model for young women in STEM. And I saw that you recently got recognized by STEMettes. You did an article with them. Would you mind talking about what it's been like, not only being recognized by, I guess it's like a journal, but also to know that you're now like officially a role model for young women in STEM?
Yeah, I was like first completely shocked. Like, they had reached out and asked, can you write an article? Like, I didn't even know they had like a section with about, inspiring women. And it's an amazing website, an amazing organization. And I was inspired by one of the co-founders, Dr. A. Marie. And yeah, so when they reached out and said, write an article about science here, it was like a big thing. So when I saw the website itself, there's so many like popular, like inspiring women like back in the days. And so for, me to write an article about this massive project that I have, like I didn't expect it. So I'm like still like it only came up like last week, and I'm sort of still like processing it. And to see like, especially as a Tamil woman, I think that's another main thing, especially as an Eelam Tamil woman. I'm probably like one of the first ones on there, and I felt like representation for me is very, very important, because I felt like for me, I didn't have anyone like a role model, like someone who's Tamil or South Asian that I was inspired by, and I felt like if I had that would have been amazing. So I feel like for me to be on the website and maybe younger, Tamil women or South Asian women seeing that, like for them, they would be inspired by it.
Now you are that now, which is so cool. Must be an amazing feeling.
And yeah, being like one of the younger ones as well. Like a lot of them are much, older. Like they've completed their PhD, are already like the founders of a, massive company, CEOs, sort of thing. So it's like crazy to be on like that same, area.
So one of the other things that the article mentioned was just a little bit about you dealing with things like imposter syndrome, which I feel like is a big thing for us as women in the STEM industry. It's like most of us experience it at least once. So what has that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had like a lot of hurdles with like in general as well. Like I felt like even before I'd started Scientia, I always felt like I wasn't happy with myself. Like I felt like I had to do more. And I felt like I had to push myself, and I felt like I've grown much more as a person compared to who I was like in like undergrad. But yeah, it's always that fear of like failure. Like that's my main sort of issue that I have, and always feel like I'm not done enough. And I think one of the main things is because like, for example, my parents, they came from Sri Lanka due to the war, and they had to start their life from scratch here, right? And so they didn't like know English, like they didn't know anything, and they had to like sort of build their whole life again, like from all of that. And so they had to, blood, sweat and tears, try and like give like me and my brother like, the best possible life here. So because of like that amount of work they've given us, and they expect us obviously to do well in life. So that's sort of like things like in my mind, like, I have to make sure, I make them proud. So that's like that sort of fear of failure is like always like in my mind, But yeah, I think overcoming it is still like a hard journey. Like for some people, it's not that easy, to have that sort of positive self-talk, But sometimes I just try and think like how much I've grown, and I've overcome all of that, and like things will get better. I just need to have a bit of a more like stronger, mindset. But I just tell myself that I should be proud with how far I've come, like, in this process. So, yeah.
You definitely should.
Thank you.
So much right. Just based on that, so you did mention it briefly, but if you wouldn't mind giving just some advice to other young women that might be struggling with feelings of maybe imposter syndrome or like they're not doing enough, like what advice would you give to them?
I just feel like, obviously they always say there's always like a positive light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that is true. And you should just believe in yourself, because if you just put that negative self-talk on you, you feel like you're not going to go anywhere and you're still going to be stuck in that same position. And I know there's going to be like blips along the way, like rejections and stuff, but they always say like rejection is always a redirection, right? And there will be like a better opportunity for you, like somewhere. And like even for me, when applying for jobs, internships, like it never went my way. And I felt like I kept telling myself, well, I wish I'd applied to this, I wish I'd applied to that, and tried a bit more. But then all of that sort of combined as well to make me then think about, let me start my own project, you know, and help other people. And so for it to become like such a big project that I didn't even think, like nearly now, it's like a year and a bit now since I launched it. Now thinking about it, like back then, I wouldn't even think like, oh my gosh, it would grow this big now. So yeah, I just feel like just keep believing in yourself, and you know, the right thing will come to you. You just need to keep working hard and just not give up. Like if you have the determination and you've got the passion for it, then just go with it. Just don't let other people, you know, mess that up in your head. Like if you think you can do it, you should just do it. That's what I think.
That was wonderful.
Thank
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Just any last advice for students that are maybe interested in something that maybe their biology teacher isn't going forth on, or just like their teacher isn't like expanding on it as much as they would like. For example, biology, stem cells, regenerative therapies.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for those students that maybe think, well, my teacher hasn't gone that far into it, maybe I should just pause? Like, how would you, I guess, motivate them to find their own path or really just study what they're after?
Yeah, I think, obviously, I think now is going to be much popular in terms of stem cell regenerative therapies. But if, like, if you still feel like, if students still feel like, oh, it's too brief, like, I want to know more, then obviously, like, you should do your own research at home. Like, that's what I did. Like, as soon as I heard about it, I just went home and I was like, let me type it up and, like, read all about it, sort of thing. So just research it online and just finding, there's like so many talks now that goes on about stem cells, like, just finding those opportunities. There's, like, so many free, you know, events that you can go to. And it's also good to, you know, just gain new knowledge, like, outside of what you're doing. Just go out there and just, you know, do it for your own thing, like not for your, just for your study. Like if you're actually interested, just go. But yeah, I think the main thing is like going to talks. Like I'm so glad I went to those talks back in high school, because I don't think if I didn't, then again, I probably wouldn't have known that much knowledge into like stem cells. And hopefully, I mean, I hope there's like obviously opportunities out there like to do lab work in stem cells as well. That's also another big thing. Hands-on experience is really important. Yeah, I think it's just mainly just doing your own research and just finding opportunities out there. There's so many like opportunities right now.
Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much.
Hi again, awesome listener. That wraps up another deep dive of Cameron's Lab Dive In. Before you dive back into your day, see what I did there? Take a second to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Want a behind-the-scenes look? Bonus content? Or just some good old STEM fun? Follow me on my socials. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Cameron's Lab. And remember, every episode is a new adventure, and we've got some thrilling dives lined up for you. Don't miss out. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.